Okay, last video of the day. We are going to do Tailor's Tacks and Notches, and so you should have printed your little Tailor Tacks and Notches page. It's not rocket science, but it's going to be useful. I have two already cut out, and then some squares. I maybe just have color ADD because we're doing a different color now. And then I have, you can have scissors or snips, and I have my needle threaded with about 20 inches of thread, and it's doubled back. So you can see there it goes all the way, both ends meet. Maybe you can't see that, sorry. Okay, so let's start with Tailor Tacks. I wanna show you, you can't see me when I'm up here. Here it is. Okay, so here's our little pattern that we're going to be making, and it actually calls for Tailor's Tacks, which makes me very excited because that means you're going to be able to use one of your new skills. So I'm going to open it up just enough to peek. I'm not going to open it crazy because we're going to regret that. But I want you to see these little circles here. Those are Tailor's Tacks. It's just the little circles. And that's making a ton of noise. Okay, so, I kind of wish I had pins right now. All right, take two pieces of fabric, line them up, and pin your Tailor Tacks square to the top. You can do it in one or two places depending on type A or type B personality. And there we go. Pinned with two squares. I'm really trying to make sure that you can see everything this time. And take your needle and thread and, goodness, I'm trying to do my best here. Go in one end all the way through. Leave a good tail there, and then come back out the other end. And you just need to hit two sides of the circle, just like that. Now, on the way back, leave your loop longish, like an inch each side, if that makes sense. And now you can go ahead and do your other Tailor Tack too without snipping if you want. Well, no, let's snip. Okay, you see how we have two long, like extra inch on each side, extra inch here. We're gonna do the same thing with the other circle. And I'm gonna set my needle free. Okay, so the cool thing about Tailor Tacks is that when you mark your fabric for a pattern with the chalk paper, the tracing wheel and stuff, you can only affect one fabric at a time. And so with these, we have done something magical because we are marking something that we can't reach with our marking pen, but we're marking two pieces of fabric at once. I'm going to go ahead and let this slide off. Okay, so this is free, but I've got my two pieces of fabric. And so I'm just going to separate them a little bit. Let me see. Can you see that? Okay, separating that a little bit, setting them free. We want that thread to stay in place. Okay. Now, both fabrics. Wow, did it just get dark? Okay, now both fabrics are marked the same way, and we leave lots of extra thread length so that it doesn't get lost or fall out. You can definitely tug on these to pull them up a little higher, and it seems like a silly step that's kind of easy to overlook, and I have been known to skip it myself. But then you go back to actually constructing your pattern, and you really thank 2 hours ago Rachel for having gone ahead and made Tailor tacks so that you can line up your fabrics. Basically, I feel like I'm rambling, sorry. Basically, in the future, these guys are going to have to line back up. That's what we're trying to do. Or they're going to line up to a new piece, let's say piece C, which is the pocket for your bag, and it will have its own little Tailor tacks that will need to line up. And it'll be magical, and the birds will sing, and it'll be great. So that's Tailor tacks. Okay, I'm resisting the urge to reshoot that last video because I was rambling. I'm gonna go ahead and be calm and move us through to notches, and we're gonna pin, really you just need one piece of fabric for that, let's not waste fabric. Pin one square to your notches thing. Now this is gonna feel like a silly busy work thing, but it's just to demonstrate marking on fabric for a pattern. So you will, in future pattern usage, see either single triangles or double triangles to mark your fabric. This is another one where in the future, let's say this is the left pant leg or the front of the left pant leg, and you also need to line it up in the future to the right side of the left pant, or to the back side of the left pant leg. These are another way to indicate on the edge of fabric, so you don't have to mess with your needle and thread. If it's on the edge of fabric, you can mark it by snipping it, as long as you don't snip all the way into the seam allowance, and they'll not make your triangles go into the seam allowance. So use snips or something, scissors or snips. Snip out that triangle all the way. Okay. And that is how you mark that fabric. And then in the future, down the line, in a future step, it's going to say line up notches, and they'll line up, and you'll feel glad. Now another way to do that, well, sometimes they do 2 notches, because I think just because they want to be thorough, you can cut those 2 notches. Sometimes I cheat. I use my water soluble side of my pen and just kind of do like a little peek and mark right at those 2 spots. And you may or may not be able to see those little marks, but there they are. And so that's another way to mark it. I always do the scissors, almost always, but you can also mark it with your pen. Just don't mark it with the air-soluble side of your pen, because it will vanish. So that's notches. That's the end of today's lesson. That was a lot. Also, I'm gonna be wearing the same clothes for tomorrow's lesson because it's actually today. And I hope y'all are enjoying this.